Hi, Danville. Alan Shields here, Chief of Police for the town. I just want to make sure you can hear me. So we are 10-8 in service, which means we're here to safeguard the lives, rights, and property of everyone we serve. We do that in an effort to make people's lives. I wanna Thank you, and appreciate everyone for joining. We're going to cover a lot of stuff. So we're still in the middle of our FEMA All Hazards Guide. We're also starting our annual report. As I promised last week, I presented this to the town council. You can actually download this yourself directly from the chief's website. There should be a link down in the description for that. A lot of really good information here. This is the annual report, so this is the one that is comprehensive. And today we're going to cover a little bit of information on use of force, and we're going to cover pursuit. We'll kind of define both of those, and then we'll give you some of the numbers so you can get an idea of what it is that we do here in town. All right, so what we're covering this time is the FEMA All Hazards Guide, so we'd appreciate it if you'd go and download that. There's a lot of information. We're highlighting power outage in general. Uh, there's information on what you can do to protect yourself prior to, so you can be prepared, what you can do during, and then some of the things you should do after, such as throwing away medication and food that may be spoiled. Make sure you download the Wildfire Preparedness and Evacuation Guide as well. There's a lot of good information in there. And then sign up for the Community Warning System alert at the Sheriff's Office. Links for everything is in the description. In the Wildfire Guide, you'll find really detailed descriptions on how you can have a plan, what you can do to prepare yourself, your family, and your pets. Go to the PG&E website as well. There's a lot of good information on there for how you can prepare for power-related issues. We have our Citizens Academy. This is a great opportunity to join us live and in person. We get to meet a lot of the staff that work here. It's a fun experience, but it's fun with a purpose. That's going to be kicking off March 27th. If you want another opportunity to do two things, really, probably more so, enjoy a good pastry. We are going to be doing coffee with the cops, and I'm gonna butcher the name, and I want to apologize, but it's at Maison Benoit, and it's a new French pastry bakery down in downtown. It's on the railroad side of downtown, so it's 402 Railroad. If you're not familiar, it's kind of up the street from Crumbs and across the street from Lunardi's, so right in that area. So it's a good chance to come and visit us. Probably a better chance to come and have some good pastries. They are delicious there. If you haven't tried it, it is a great place. We appreciate them for hosting. It's no secret. We don't go to some place where no one's at, set up a pole that says Danville Police and say, "Come visit us," because frankly, not too many people would probably come, right? So we try to go to places that are packed full of people. That's why you see us at Pete's and Starbucks, and you'll see us at some of the restaurants in the downtown area, some of the restaurants in the Blackhawk area. And I can't think of a place that has been more packed lately than Maison Benoit. It has been absolutely packed. It's a great place, great pastries. Probably a little too much based on the second chin that I'm working on here, but it is a great place, and we really do look forward. That's going to be tomorrow between 9 and 10. Tomorrow between 9 and 10. So come join us there. All right, let's cover some crime. CommunityCrimeApp.com. This is where you can download as it's happening. You can download and look at what is happening in your area. You can also zoom in and set a crime alert. It's uploaded several times a day from our system to this database. The only thing that's excluded, and I was reminded about this, we don't put sex offenses there. We don't put uh, domestic violence offenses there, and we do that to protect the identity. All right. And then you can also look at sexual offender registry information there as well. All right, March 4th to the 10th of 2024. For traffic, we had two injury collisions and two hit and runs. Should have been hit and runs, not property. So two injury collisions and two hit and runs. If you look, the injury collisions are out east there, and one of the hit and runs was down in the Costco parking lot there. On the 5th, we had an injury collision, 3400 block of Camino Tasera. This was a vehicle into a pedestrian in the parking lot. That's that Safeway parking lot there. On the 6th, we had an injury collision on Camino Tasera and Wood Ranch Drive. This was a vehicle into a PG&E pole. And then our two hit and runs. The first was a non-injured hit and run. This is on Railroad near School Street. It was a car that was parked along the curb line of the road, and there was a vehicle that hit it and then fled. On the 10th, we had another hit and run, and this was in the Trader Joe's parking lot. This was a vehicle into a parked car, and this is the one that didn't actually make the map. As far as crime, you would think 3 would be a good number, but it's not great. Fortunately, no violent crime. That's a good week for us. Again, the numbers shifted a little bit. It should be 2 burglaries and 1 theft, not 2 assaults. So 2 burglaries, 1 theft. And Burglaries are in purple. We've got one out east and one in one of those little communities off Diablo Road. On the 8th, we had a residential burglary on Cameron Court, and that was at 7:51, and they broke in through the rear slider. On the 9th, we had a theft of a wallet, and this was interesting. This was from a shoulder bag from a shopper that was at Trader Joe's, and it happened at 1:59. And then on the 10th, we had a residential burglary on Weatherly Court, and this one they broke through the rear slider. Now we know the exact dates of the residential burglary on the first one because the owner had a camera so that we could place the theft at exactly that time. That dramatically increases our chances of solving the crime. So it's a great job. On the wallet theft, again, Trader Joe's is a great partner of ours, as is Costco and some of the other businesses, and they have good information that they can provide us that helps us to work towards solving those crimes. Two burglaries, that's kind of a lot. If you think about it, we had a total of about 46 or 47 burglaries all of last year. That includes both residential and commercial. So to have 2 in 1 week, that's pretty significant. I mean, that you average it out, it'd be over 100 in a year, so that's quite a bit. That's more than we normally see. So I wanted to show you a picture. This isn't an in-depth analysis, but just a picture of what the residential burglary view looks like for 2024 so far. So if you look, typically, if you would have asked me 5 or 10 years ago, I would have said that the residential burglaries are occurring along the 680 corridor. It's easy access on and off the freeway. We are seeing a lot more out east, kind of Wood Ranch east. So that if you're not familiar with where Wood Ranch is, it's near Sycamore Park. So they seem to be starting at Sycamore Park and heading east to the east end of town. Some of those are not technically Danville burglaries, they're in the Blackhawk area, but, being that we're sheriff's office, we look at all of those. And then you can see there are 4 in the, 680 corridor area, which is typically where we used to see them in the past. Most of what we're seeing in general, just to give you something to look for, is we're seeing that the people breaking the homes are going in through rear sliders, and, they're taking jewelry and purses, and so, you wanna be kind of on the lookout for that. It goes in line with if you see something suspicious, please let us know. It could be a car that's parked in front of your house that's not normally there. It could be, maybe a car with someone in it, right, at the entrance to your neighborhood. Maybe it's someone lingering in open space behind the houses. Anything that's kind of out of the ordinary. You know, what we do is we say that all of us as a community, the police, the residents, the business owners, we all share the exact same responsibility for public safety. The police are just the ones you pay full time to do it. And so what that means from your end is we understand that all of you are the experts in your neighborhood. So you're gonna know what looks out of place. So it's sometimes hard for me to actually give you advice, when to call on what looks out of place, other than to simply say, "Trust your judgment on what you feel is out of place." The worst that happens if you say you saw someone jumping a back fence in your neighbor's house, and that looks strange, right? Someone jumping the back fence. You call us out there, and we stop and say, "Hey, how are you? We had a report that you were jumping in the back fence." Maybe the kid says, "Oh, that's my friend's house," and we work that out. Um, if the person takes off running, that's probably an indicator of something different that but we get called to a lot of suspicious things that ultimately end up not being suspicious, and frankly, we would rather go to those calls than miss the one that truly is suspicious and is a crime that is happening. So a fair amount of burglaries. Let's take a look at the arrest log. March 4th through the 10th. On the 5th, we booked a man in jail for DUI, and he was found driving on Camino Tassajara and Old Blackhawk Road. On the 7th, we booked another man, in jail for DUI and for a probation violation. He was found near O'Brien Place. On the 8th, we site released a man for possession of drug paraphernalia, and he was located on the 500 block of El Pintado Road. And then on the 10th, we site released, another man for a warrant out of Sonoma County, and he was located on San Ramon Valley Boulevard and Ridgeland Drive. So kind of the usual. Unfortunately, we'd love to see 0 DUI arrests. That would mean that people aren't creating the condition that can result in death. I don't, I think we get a little complacent with the driving, and what I'd ask you to do is encourage your neighbors, because 'cause I'm sure nobody watches this show, drives while they've had something to drink, but encourage your neighbors to not drink and drive. I mean, there is, an abundance of ways to get home now without having to have a drink and drive and put others at risk. All right, this is a live show, so if you have a question, go ahead and, ask it right in the chat. If you remember last week, someone stumped the chief. I couldn't answer the question. I did some research afterwards and was able to get a partial answer. And the question was, there was a roadblock on Sycamore Valley Road because a tree was down in the road. So we had officers on both sides blocking the road. And the question was, what happened to the car that went through the roadblock? And we were able to spot the car. We were able to find the plate. And our officers had to make the decision: do they kind of abandon post and go after the car, or do they maintain their post? And what they decided was to maintain their post. At that point, what we knew was the only people that were at risk were the people working on the tree, cutting it up and doing that. And we knew that they were going to be safe, so there wasn't an immediate hazard where the officers needed to take immediate action. They decided to maintain their post to ensure that no one else got through, and then we would address it with the driver later with a phone call. It turned out to be an elderly driver, a little bit of confusion, but that was the end result on that. So, thank you for the question. You stumped the chief. That was a good one, and we do appreciate the questions. We're going to jump into the annual report next, and then we're going to cover the all hazards guide after that. So, our 2023 annual report. This is a report looking back on last year and what we did as a police department. There's a lot of good information in there. Kind of, we're looking at the numbers. This is just a snapshot of what we did. Uh, Total calls for service. So we did 22,000. We responded to 22,658 calls, and that's up from just over 19,000 the year prior. Citations. This is not necessarily. Let me be clear. It's actually not at all a quota. We don't require that officers write it. It's just a measure of traffic enforcement. If citations are up, that means we're probably doing more enforcement. If they're down, we're probably doing less enforcement. And it relates directly to our collision rate. If our collisions are going up, we'll usually attack the problem one of three ways. We will work to do education to the community, education in the schools, uh, and we will also work with our transportation folks to see if we can come up with an engineering solution. And if all of those fail, we do enforcement. We're always doing enforcement, but we want to get in those first two buckets because we know that we'll have a longer lasting effect if we create an engineering solution that makes it so that the violation cannot occur. If we use enforcement, we know it's kind of like playing whack-a-mole. It's as effective as an officer is there. Once the officer is gone, it usually loses some effectiveness. All right, so last year we wrote 3,850 citations, and that's up from about 1,900 in 2022. We had a total reported crime. Now, this is, clearly we can't count what's unreported. We had a total reported Part 1 crime of 300, and that is lower than any other pre-pandemic year. In the years of 2020, 21, 22, we were all slightly below 300, but last year for the first time, we hit 300. Um, if you look at our vehicle pursuits, we'll talk about those a little bit more. Vehicle pursuits, we had 8 total pursuits, 3 apprehensions, and 5 were terminated. We had 276 total reported traffic collisions in 23. That's up from 230 in 2022. And then we had a total of 4,643 traffic enforcement stops, and that's up from about 3,300 in 22. So that's a lot of activity. If you think about it, we've got a total of 30 assigned officers. Of those 30 officers, it puts us at about 0.67 officers per 1,000. The county average is about 1.19 or 1.2. So we're a little over half of what your average Contra Costa County Police Agency is using to patrol the streets. So that's a lot of productivity considering the amount of officers we have on the street. I believe we're able to do that because of the partnership with the community, the fact that most, if not all of the community members are pulling in the same direction, and that's the direction of public safety. All right, let's talk about use of force and pursuits. We're going to go over use of force first. Use of force can look at the different force options that an officer has. Now, in order to use force, we'll just kind of zoom in here. Naval officers shall only use that force objectively reasonable, protect themselves, others, or overcome resistance to authority. And if you look here's the list of types of force that an officer may use. Professional presence. Now, this one technically isn't a use of force. This is just simply the officer's presence, their ability to communicate, their ability to de-escalate. and it's basically the preventative measure that keeps us from using force at all. And then the first line is physical force, and this is just simply, using control holds, it may be physical pressure, maybe someone doesn't want handcuffs to be applied, and so we will forcibly pull their hands back. What it does not include, it does not include any kind of a strike. So a closed fist strike, a baton strike, electronic weapon, any of that. It's simple grappling techniques, and no more than that. And then we have chemical agents such as the pepper spray. The electronic weapon is commonly referred to as a taser. Personal weapons, those are body parts, close fist strikes, and then it goes through impact, canines, specialized weapons. Those are some less lethal projectiles, firearms, and deadly force. And the reason I wanted to show you that is we have you have to know the definition so that when I tell you how many times force, the type of force that was used, it'll provide you a clearer picture as to how Danville officers used force in 2023. So let's take a look. Let me see if I can get to the next screen here. So in 2023, now remember, we responded to 22,568 calls, made 328 arrests, and we used force a total of 19 times. And of those 19 times, only 18 or all 18 of the 19, it was only physical force that was used. Again, remember that forcing someone's hands behind their back. In some cases, if someone is attempting to hurt themselves, it may be forcing them onto a gurney so that we can strap them down and get them to the hospital so they can get treatment. It may be someone that's refusing a court-ordered blood draw, where we hold them down and we draw the blood. There was only one occasion that was not physical force, and in that occasion, it was the use of an electronic weapon, and that was against someone who was resisting arrest for public intoxication. So you can see your Danville officers use force very, very rarely when you put it in the context of how many interactions we have with the public. And then of those uses of force, they're very, very, very low levels of force. In fact, many of them were for people suffering from mental health. Some had ran into the street, those sort of things. So a lot of the force that was used was to keep them from continuing to create conditions that would hurt themselves. Now, I already talked about the numbers, how many pursuits we get in, but we need to talk about why does an officer pursue? And so let's take a look at what an officer does. So a pursuit is essentially when a suspect fails to yield to the authority of the officer. And what the officer will do is, and there's a lot of factors that go into it, but an officer must constantly be considering whether to initiate and continue a pursuit, and they use what's called the balance test. And what they do is they balance the interest of catching the person versus the risk to public safety. And that's the balance that is constantly being made. And what we do, and this is in our policy and it's actually published online, is we'll typically have at least two officers in a pursuit and a supervisor that has to approve that pursuit. And so there's always someone that's not directly involved in the pursuit that's going to monitor that pursuit and make sure that it's safe. But let's take a look at the numbers. So in the red box there, you can see in 23, we pursued 8 vehicles, we apprehended 3, and what that means is that 5 got away. And what it usually means is that our officers believe that the need to apprehend the person is not greater than the risk that's being posed to the public. And so if you see, we actually terminate more pursuits than we continue. And what we have to look at is we have to look at what does a successful pursuit or what are the victories that we're looking for? What's a great victory in a pursuit is if we catch the person, if they've committed a crime, we arrest them for that crime. If there's property that was stolen, we collect all of that stolen property. Great. We realize that's not always true. In fact, it's rarely true. And so the first thing, and I'll give you an example. Let's say someone comes into town, and this just happened recently. Someone comes into town, and it's a car that we know has been involved in stealing from town, right? It's a wanted vehicle, and that vehicle hits our license plate cameras. The officers alert, and before that person can break into any home, any car in town, any business in town, the officers are there. They find a violation, they try to stop the car, and the car flees. Well, once the car is out of town, that's that's win number 1, right? We've prevented a crime from happening, and if we can put our effort in any bucket, so to speak, we wanna put it in the prevention bucket. And so that's the first win. The second win is if we can get people identified in the car, if we can capture the car, and so on. But we have to celebrate the little victories as well as the big ones. All right. Any questions on that? Throw them in the chat. I'm checking the chat. I don't see any. So we'll move on to the FEMA all hazards checklist. We're going to cover earthquakes. So earthquakes are a big one. This that we are in earthquake country for sure. There's a lot you can do to be prepared. So if an earthquake happens, it's still drop cover. Hold on. You can get into doorways under sturdy objects that are going to help you. If you're in a vehicle, stay in your vehicle. If you're in a bed, stay there. Um, if you're outdoors, stay outdoors. It's pretty much you're going to have to assess it as you go. The doorway advice of old, that's no good. But you also don't want to go running outside unless the building you're in is structurally coming down. All right, so let's take a look. So I wanted to show you this one. The title on this is a little bad, but it's not when a cyber attack happens. It's for your earthquakes. The points I wanted to show here is one, create a family emergency communication plan, especially if you have kids that are off doing different things. You might be in different areas. You want to make sure that you can communicate. Consider creating a text string and make sure that everybody knows that that's what you're going to do. A lot of times, the phones you will not be able to make a call because they're going to be busy, but you can oftentimes get a text to go through. The other is make a supply kit that includes enough food, water. This says for at least 3 days. We recommend at least 2 weeks. And I want to show you the lengths that your Danville PD will go to. We actually went to Hawaii to make sure that we could show you what being prepared looks like. This was an Aloha trip. And in there, we saw a Oahu disaster bunker. So this is what one of their little bunkers looks like. And what they do is they keep enough food on hand for 14 days. And so if you look, there's there's some Spam on the shelf there. There's a lot of toilet paper. Those in the back on the right, those are big jugs of water back there, and then these red buckets are food buckets in the middle. And so we'll take a little bit of a closer look at those. Come back up here. Okay. So if you look on their supplies list, they recommend supply list for 14 days, 1 gallon of water, and this is what you should have per person: a gallon of water, 6 ounces of Spam. So if you want to go the Spam route, third cup of rice, 2 dehydrated emergency food meal packs, and 57 sheets of toilet paper. All right. And then how do you stay safe? Again, drop, cover, hold on. If you want to pause this, you can pause it and read it later, but our recommendation is just to download the guide. Uh, if you're in a vehicle, stay in the vehicle and be safe afterwards. Look for those aftershocks. Know that they're coming. We haven't had earthquakes where we don't. If you remember a few years back, we had a swarm of earthquakes down in the south end of town, down by the Crow Canyon Country Club, where it seemed like we were getting them. Don't enter damaged buildings. Look for gas leaks, and then save phone calls for emergencies. Try to use the text messages if you can. All right, I'm going to check and see. I don't see anything in the chat. So with that, if you want a chance to come hang out with us live tomorrow between 9 and 10, we're going to be at Maison Benoit, and that's at 402 Railroad Avenue. We'll be there tomorrow between 9 and 10. So it's March 14th, Thursday, between 9 and 10. It's a great place. It's a great chance to come see us in person. Also, our Citizens Academy starts a little over a week on the 27th, a couple weeks on the 27th, and we still have a couple of spots remaining. Good opportunity to join us. And then make sure you sign up for our community warning system, download the Wildfire Preparedness and Evacuation Guide, visit PG&E's website, and make sure you download the FEMA All Hazards Guide, which is what we're showing today. Um, with that, I appreciate all of you joining us. We're going to continue covering the female hazards checklist. We're just going to keep running through that, and we're also going to cover the annual report. So we're going to start taking a deeper dive into crime, deeper dive into traffic. We're going to talk about our investigators and what they do to help you out, our volunteers. You'll get a pretty deep look as to what the police department does for you. With that, we are 10:10, which means we're off duty, but we're always 10:08 in service to all of you. Have a good night, Danville.